Well, hey, this is Josh Nelson with the Seven Figure Agency, and this month, as we've been working with our Seven Figure Agency members, we've been going deep on sales process mastery and what it really takes to land clients on a very consistent basis to grow your digital marketing agency. And the fact is, if you can't close clients and if you can't add new clients on a consistent basis, there's no way your agency can succeed. And so as we've kind of gone deep on this with the members, we've been doing some role playing, I've been listening to some of the members' calls, and a couple mistakes just kind of stood out to me. Actually, I've identified 7 critical mistakes that agencies are making that are probably costing you a lot of money in your digital marketing agency. So I wanted to spend a couple minutes to kind of talk through this with you, kind of make sure that you know what these mistakes are so that you can solve them and start getting better results and start landing clients on a more consistent basis. How's that sound? Hit the plus button below or the thumbs up if that sounds good. So the first mistake I'm seeing agencies make is they're not tracking. Right? I really have found to be 100% true that what you measure gets done. What you track always improves. And so if you're just going about your day saying, I'll get as many strategy sessions or sales appointments as I can, and whatever comes in is good enough, that's a recipe for failure, right? If we know that sales is the most important driver in our agencies, and it's the thing that we should be focused on all of the time because it's going to move the needle, it's going to move us forward, then we have to track, we have to set targets. And so really what I believe is, you want to track a couple of KPIs in your sales process on a very, very proactive basis. First thing is, how many strategy sessions did you get? The fact is, if you're not getting to 10 to 15 qualified strategy sessions every single month, you're not going to be able to land 3 to 5 clients. You're not going to be able to grow. So that's the first thing, right? You have to track on a monthly basis how many actual strategy sessions did you or your sales team conduct. The second is, what's the show-up rate? Fact is, if you don't have good systems and processes in place, show-up rates I've seen as little as 50%. So you can have 20 scheduled strategy sessions and only have 10 actually follow through. So you want to track that and you want to put systems in place that can improve that show-up rate. The third is, what's your close rate? Out of all those strategy sessions, what percentage of them are converting? What percentage are signing up? What percentage are buying? The fact is, when you start to track these things, again, what you measure gets done. So you're going to start to get more strategy sessions. You're going to start to get more at-bats. And what you track always improves in any area of your life. So as you start to track your show-up rate, as you start to track your close rate, you'll start to make little tweaks and little adjustments that really can improve your sales rate without changing anything in your sales process. So that's the first thing. You have to know your numbers. You have to track it. You'll never know what your close rate is. You'll never know what your show-up rate is if you're not tracking that and measuring it on a consistent basis. So that's number one. Have to start with the tracking. That's fundamental. Number two is I find a lot of agencies wing it. So they think they're just going to show up for the sales call. They're going to have a conversation with the prospect, and they're going to let the meeting go where it goes, and hopefully at the end of it, the prospect buys. I can tell you that's not the best way to approach your sales process. Now, I'm not saying you have to follow a structured script. I'm not saying you have to have a PowerPoint presentation that you read slide by slide. Don't get me wrong. But I am saying you want to have an engineered sales process that kind of follows a flow. Look, here's the questions I ask. Here's how I build rapport. Here's how I understand what they're trying to accomplish so I can bridge the gap. These are the questions that I ask throughout to get little micro commitments and micro yeses. This is how I present my offering, and this is how I ask for the business, right? And so you want to have that structured. You want to have it mapped out so that you can follow it over time. What I know is if you wing it, you can't dial it in, right? There's no way you can figure out, okay, this is how I did it this time. What do I need to change in order to improve that close rate going forward, right? The other really critical aspect of this whole thing of having a script, having a flow, is that if you don't have it scripted, you can never hand it off. Like you're anchoring yourself to the sales process for the rest of your business. So you have to, if you have any vision in your company of scaling yourself out, building a sales team, letting that sales team run with it, you have to have it scripted out. You have to give a flow to yourself so you can make it better. And then you have to have a flow that you can hand off to your sales team so that they have a proven model that they're working from. I can tell you, if you're a one-man operation and you're responsible for sales in your business, just putting a script in place or a flow that you follow that you can iterate and improve over time will have massive impact on how well you sell and how many new clients you get on a consistent basis. So that's number 2. Number 3 is talking too much, right? We're digital marketers. We're passionate about SEO and pay-per-click and funnels and everything in between. And so we tend to get excited about this. And we want to talk about, hey, here's what we're doing with Facebook ads. And here's what we can do with SEO. And here's how we build all of these links and these PBN networks to get you ranked on page 1. And as I've listened to some of these sales calls, it just gets into way too much talking, right? One thing I know for sure is that selling is not telling. If you're talking more than 50% of any strategy session, and some would say it should probably be less, like less than 30%, but if you're talking more than 50% of the strategy session, you are not being persuasive, right? You have to talk. You have to let them talk. You got to have them explain their reasons. You have to let them tell you where they're at and what they're trying to accomplish and what they've tried in the past. Selling's not telling. Really, you'd have to monitor this. If you're talking the whole strategy session and you're expecting to close the business at the end, you're up for a rude awakening. And this might be something that you can just change that would have a big impact on your close rates. The 4th, and it kind of goes with selling is not telling or talking too much, the 4th is not connecting to the prospect's goals and emotional rationale, right? They don't care about the SEO strategies. They don't care about the pay-per-click advertising. All they care about is the result that they have in mind, right? Great quote. You have to sell the holes, not the drill, right? When somebody goes to Home Depot and they go to buy a drill, what do they want? They want a hole in their wall. And the guy at Home Depot might want to talk about the rotations per second and all of this other fancy stuff, but the reality is, hey, look, this will put a hole into your wall. It's $17. Right? That's how you have to think about your sales process. Do not get technical. So really, what I found to work really well is to make sure you understand what their goal is. Like, how are they trying to grow their business? Are they trying to increase their lead flow? Are they adding another truck? Are they expanding their operation? What's the goal, right? And then you have to really connect to why that's important to them. So you want to engineer this into the sales process. When we started doing this, we saw a massive increase in our sales rates. It's not just, okay, you want to go from $1 million to $2 million. It's, why is that important to you? Like, how will going to $2 million impact you personally, right? How committed are you to making that a reality in your life? Why not just keep things the way that they are? How committed are you to that, right? And when you can get them answering these questions and you can get them kind of leaning in and explaining their reasons and their rationale and connecting it to the emotion, then when you come around and explain, hey, here's who we are, this is what we can do, this is how we can help you accomplish that goal, that's extremely persuasive. And if you're not doing that in your sales process, you're not understanding what they're trying to accomplish and connecting back to it, that's going to be hurting your sales rates pretty strong. Number 5, failing to ask for the business or get a next step. It's funny. I'll talk with agencies and ask, oh, I know you had a sales call. How did it go? And they'll say, I think it went great. I go, okay, tell me about that. Well, I showed him my thing, and he said to send a proposal, and I'm going to send it off to him. That, by all means, is not a good strategy session. That's not a good outcome, right? On that call, it should be very clear. You talked about their goals, you talked about what they're looking to accomplish, you showed them what they have in place and where there's room for improvement, and you made them an offer, right? And they either said yes, they said no, or they said they need to look it over and there's a scheduled next step. In the absence of those 3 things happening at the end of a sales call, it was a complete fail, right? So make sure that you're very clear on the end of every strategy session. Yes, great, you got a credit card, you got an authorization, you're off to the races. No, it wasn't a fit, and that's just as good, right? That's fine. Or, okay, I need to look at the document. I need to make sure this makes sense. And you scheduled, okay, great. I'll send it off to you. What other details do you need? And let's schedule right on that call when the next meeting is going to take place. Every strategy session should be one of those 3 outcomes. Otherwise, you're really not doing it right. Mistake number 6, and this blows my mind, is not recording and reviewing sales calls, right? The way the technology works today, almost all of us are doing these strategy sessions on Zoom, we're doing them on GoToMeeting, and we're showing them stuff. We're having a consultative strategy session, we're showing them their website, we're showing them what we can do, we're showing them examples. It is so easy to press the record button. And I really think that every strategy session that you or your sales team does should be recorded. That way you can go back and listen to it. You can find the inflection points. You can look at the sales that you closed and won, and it's going to feel, okay, what do we do right here? And the ones that you lost. Well, maybe there was something that I asked or some way that I failed to connect. This is one of the most powerful and free options that you have that you should be doing every single time. Because, again, you can't improve what you don't track, right? You've got a script, you follow it, you record the conversation, you go back and listen to it, and this is going to help improve your sales rate drastically, but it also really props you up to be able to hand off your sales process at some point in the future. Because eventually you're going to have a library of closed strategy sessions, right? Where you can say, okay, sales guy, here's the script to follow, here's recordings so that they can model success. Right, so they can hear the tonality, they can hear the questions, they can hear kind of the answering of objections. And so just make sure you're recording and reviewing your sales calls, and that every sales call has an outcome tracked, right? Was it won? Was it lost? Did they show up? Did they not show up? And did you schedule a next step, right? So that one's an easy solve, right? Go into Zoom webinar if you're using Zoom, turn on the auto record function, and now you've got a recording of every one of your sales calls. And then number 7, and this one is also like an easy fix, is failing to have an engineered follow-up process. So I understand. We all want a first call close, right? And if they didn't buy, they're probably not a good fit. And so whatever, I'm moving on trying to find a higher qualified prospect. The reality is, at least in our world, almost 80% of our sales calls don't end in a first call close, right? We take them through the strategy session. We see if it's a good fit. We make our offer. Right? We tell them we're going to send them some stuff via the mail. We ask for the business, right? Say, hey, listen, does this sound great? Yes, and we're asking little micro-commitment questions throughout. Great, let's get started. And then a lot of times they say, look, I'd like to have a document to review. I'd like to talk to a couple of references. These are commonplace things. And so what we do is we engineer what I call a hot lead follow-up. It's just a sequence of communication via email, text message, and direct mail to move them to the next step. And we engineer it within a 2-week time frame. This is very easy with the automation technology that exists today, Infusionsoft, ActiveCampaign, High Level, right? All of these platforms, you can have the strategy session, trigger a follow-up, and then have a countdown to move that prospect forward. Again, I've found almost 80% of our clients buy in after that initial call. So failing to have this hot lead follow-up can massively impact your success rate. So there you have it. These are the top 7 sales mistakes I'm seeing agencies make and how to solve them. You know, I'd love to hear from you. Do you feel like there's some other mistake that's happening in your business that you think should be added to this list? Or, you know, as you look at this, what are 1 or 2 that just kind of hit you in the head? You're like, oh my goodness, yes, I need to do that, or I need to adjust that, or I need to add that into my process. Love to hear from you in the comments on that. And if you'd like to talk about sales process mastery, really how we can help you map this out, how we can help you really dial in your sales process and have a flow that can consistently convert prospects into recurring agency clients, just type in comments sales process mastery and I'll reach out to you and we can discuss some next steps on that front. So hope you found value from this. Really appreciate your time. Look forward to hearing from you in comments and I'll talk to you soon.